You really think you can park here? The words cut through the morning air like a snapped wire, sharp, unyielding, and impossible to ignore. Jasmine Carter froze mid-step, her hands still gripping the straps of her reusable grocery bag, her eyes meeting the officer's with a calm she didn't entirely feel. The sun had just risen over Maple Street in Houston, casting long shadows of oak trees across the sidewalk, their leaves rustling in a gentle breeze that did nothing to ease the tension in the air. Neighbors were beginning to peek from behind their curtains and doorways, their morning routines interrupted by the sudden confrontation. Jasmine's son, 5-year-old Leo, clutched his small backpack, his wide eyes reflecting both curiosity and a hint of fear. Jasmine took a steadying breath, the leather handles of her bag pressing into her palms as if they reminded her to stay grounded, to remain composed despite the scene unfolding. The cop, tall and broad-shouldered, with a crisp uniform that gleamed under the sun, stepped closer, his sunglasses catching the light, reflecting a world of authority and unquestioned power. His partner hovered nearby, leaning casually against the patrol car, arms crossed, exuding the same air of superiority, while a third officer idled with hands on his belt, scanning the street with a practiced gaze that suggested control over everything in his view. The street seemed to shrink, the morning bustle fading, as if the world itself had paused to watch this encounter. The quiet hum of distant traffic replaced by the sudden tension hanging over the small patch of pavement where Jasmine and the officer stood. She noticed a small crack in the sidewalk, a detail so mundane it contrasted sharply with the drama of the moment, yet it anchored her thoughts, reminding her that she had faced challenges before, that she could navigate this with dignity. Jasmine's eyes flicked to Leo, who was gripping the straps of his backpack with tiny knuckles, and she offered him a reassuring smile, silent, conveying more than words could capture, a promise that she would handle this without panic, without yielding. The cop's voice came again, this time sharper, measured, a blend of authority and impatience, asking her to step aside, insinuating wrongdoing, implying incompetence, mocking her presence. Jasmine's heart beat steadily, a rhythm she imposed upon herself, refusing to let fear dictate her movements, refusing to grant the officers the satisfaction of seeing her flinch. She raised her chin slightly, a subtle defiance carried not in aggression but in composed strength, in the quiet assertion that she belonged here as much as anyone else. The light reflecting off the windshield of the patrol car caught her gaze, and she imagined it as a mirror of the broader world's scrutiny, observing, judging, waiting for her next move. Jasmine lifted a hand slowly, producing her phone from her coat pocket with deliberate calm, the device warm and familiar in her grasp, and spoke with a clarity that carried over the hum of the morning. "If you doubt me, call my brother." The words hung in the air, unassuming yet charged, a simple sentence that carried the weight of truth and potential consequence. The officers blinked, a brief pause breaking the rhythm of confrontation, as neighbors shuffled slightly, curiosity piqued, tension palpable. Jasmine kept her voice low, steady, but unmistakably clear, her stance firm, shoulders squared, a silent message that she would not be moved by intimidation, that she had a plan unseen yet potent, a connection that transformed her from a perceived target into a figure of quiet authority. The streets seemed to exhale, the rustle of leaves returning, blending with distant car engines and the occasional bark of a dog, while the three officers exchanged uncertain glances, unaccustomed to such calm defiance. The morning sun catching the edges of their badges and reflecting a scene that would remain etched in the memory of anyone watching. Jasmine's fingers brushed against the phone screen, a tactile reminder of agency, of preparation, of unseen strength waiting to manifest. And as she shifted slightly to protect Leo from the midday glare, the entire tableau held a cinematic stillness, the ordinary morning transformed into a stage of tension and impending revelation. The morning continued with a soft hum of the neighborhood coming to life, children laughing as they walked to school, dogs barking in yards, and the occasional distant siren blending into the rhythm of the day. Jasmine Carter stood beside her car, the warm sunlight reflecting off the polished metal and highlighting the slight creases in her coat from the rush of the previous hour. She adjusted the strap of Leo's backpack on his shoulders, making sure it sat evenly, her fingers brushing lightly over the worn fabric that had seen countless mornings like this, each filled with the quiet routines that carried her through single parenthood. Her eyes scanned the street, taking in familiar sights. The corner store with its faded sign, the row of townhouses lining the sidewalk, the oak trees that had grown alongside the pavement for decades. Each detail grounded her, reminding her that this was her community, her rhythm, and that no outsider could dictate her presence without consequence. Leo shifted slightly, tugging at her hand for reassurance, and she squeezed back gently, her voice low and calm as she said, "We are going to school now, just like every day." The sound of a car door closing across the street made her glance up, her senses alert, but her demeanor composed. The morning air carrying the scent of dew and freshly cut grass that mixed with the faint aroma of coffee from a nearby cafe. Jasmine thought of the list of errands she had planned for the day, groceries to pick up, the laundry waiting at home, and the stack of bills she would need to organize by evening. Yet none of that distracted her from the current moment, the small, critical exchange happening right here on this familiar stretch of pavement. She adjusted her posture, shoulders back, chin lifted slightly, exuding a calm confidence that had been honed over years of managing challenges that no child should have to witness, but that she had learned to navigate with poise and resolve. The distant sound of children's laughter grew louder as a group walked past, momentarily drawing Leo's attention and eliciting a small smile that brightened his face, a reflection of the normalcy she strove to provide despite the tensions that occasionally punctuated their lives. Jasmine's mind wandered briefly to the supportive network she had cultivated quietly. Neighbors who exchanged polite greetings, a few trusted friends from the community, and the teachers at Leo's school who had taken the time to know him beyond the classroom. These connections, though understated, were the backbone of her confidence, reminding her that she was never truly alone in navigating the complexities of single parenthood. She took a deliberate step toward the school entrance, the concrete warm beneath her shoes, the sound of Leo's footsteps echoing softly behind her, and in that movement, there was a rhythm, a sense of purpose that carried them both forward. Jasmine's eyes flicked to the approaching street lights, still glowing faintly, casting soft shadows across the sidewalk, and she noticed the subtle interactions of the morning, a woman watering her garden, a mail carrier adjusting the strap of his bag, the flutter of newspaper pages caught briefly in the breeze. Each mundane detail reinforced her awareness, her calm scanning of the environment a practiced skill that had kept them safe and grounded. As they reached the schoolyard gate, the chatter of students and the shuffle of sneakers on pavement became more pronounced, creating a backdrop of energy and life that contrasted sharply with the stillness and careful observation she maintained. Jasmine bent slightly to adjust Leo's jacket zipper, her hands steady, her movements precise, and he looked up at her with a trust that mirrored the resilience she had built over years, a quiet understanding that she would always be there to guide him through the ordinary and extraordinary moments alike. The scent of autumn leaves mixed with the warmth of the morning sun as she stood back upright, her gaze sweeping the schoolyard, noting the teachers preparing for class, the parents lingering briefly with their children, and the sense of community that hummed quietly around them. Every detail, every sound, every movement was registered, yet she maintained a serene focus, an internal calm that had become second nature, ready to respond with integrity, wisdom, and unwavering composure to whatever challenges might arise next in their day. The moment Jasmine and Leo stepped past the schoolyard gate, the presence of authority lingered like a shadow on the edges of their morning, the echo of uniforms and the distant hum of the patrol car still resonating in her awareness. Jasmine adjusted Leo's backpack, ensuring that the straps were comfortable, her movements deliberate and methodical, a silent reassurance that their routine remained uninterrupted. She scanned the surrounding streets with a practiced eye, noting the subtle shift in the neighborhood, the neighbors now more alert, peering from their windows and doorways, their curiosity evident but tempered with respect for her composed demeanor. The morning sun climbed steadily above the rooftops, casting warm light over the pavement, highlighting the faded chalk drawings near the sidewalk and the neatly lined flower beds that framed the entrances to the townhouses. Jasmine's gaze swept over these familiar landmarks with a sense of quiet vigilance, each detail cataloged in her mind as part of the environment she navigated daily, a landscape both comforting and demanding in its routines. Leo clutched her hand lightly, and she returned the grip, guiding him forward while maintaining an internal calm that belied the undercurrent of tension from the earlier encounter. The air carried a mixture of scents: freshly mown grass, the faint aroma of baked goods from a corner bakery, and the clean, crisp scent of early autumn, all blending into a sensory backdrop that both grounded and focused her. As they approached the crosswalk, Jasmine's eyes noted the positioning of passing vehicles, the rhythm of pedestrians, and the subtle shifts in light reflecting off windshields and pavement, each movement reinforcing her awareness and careful attention to their surroundings. She kept her posture upright, shoulders squared, a subtle display of confidence and readiness, signaling both to herself and to any observers that she was capable of handling the situation with dignity and clarity. Around her, the neighborhood hummed with life. A cyclist pedaled past on the far side of the street, a delivery van idled momentarily before continuing its route, and a group of children laughed as they chased each other across the yard of a nearby school. Jasmine allowed a small, patient smile to cross her face, acknowledging the ordinary joys of the morning without losing focus on the subtleties of her surroundings. Her mind, methodical and precise, considered the various contingencies of the day, from ensuring Leo reached his classroom safely to planning the errands that awaited them afterward, each thought balanced with the need to remain fully present in the immediate moment. As they reached the steps of the school entrance, the air seemed to carry a gentle vibration of expectation. The usual morning chaos of arrivals and greetings softened by Jasmine's composed presence, her calm energy influencing the children and parents around them. She paused briefly to adjust Leo's coat collar, her fingers deft and assured, conveying a sense of stability and security that grounded him and reinforced their shared rhythm. Around them, teachers and staff moved with purpose, welcoming students and guiding them to classrooms, the sounds of footsteps on pavement and the distant ringing of school bells creating a structured cadence that Jasmine mirrored internally, her awareness of each detail and movement enhancing her sense of control and agency in the midst of ordinary life. She drew a slow breath, allowing the cool morning air to fill her lungs, centering herself as they reached the threshold of the school, a momentary stillness before the flow of activity resumed, reinforcing the notion that preparedness, presence, and quiet strength could command as much attention as authority itself. The sun, now higher in the sky, cast longer, sharper shadows across the entrance, highlighting the textures of the brick facade and the polished handrails, creating a visual reminder that the world was both predictable and full of subtle challenges, each navigated with vigilance, care, and integrity, qualities Jasmine exemplified naturally as she guided Leo toward the familiar safety of the classroom. As Jasmine stepped back onto the sidewalk after ensuring Leo had entered his classroom safely, she felt a quiet determination settle over her, a sense of purpose that had been cultivated over years of navigating a world that often underestimated her. The morning sun now climbed higher, illuminating the red brick of the school and casting long, angled shadows across the pavement, the light catching on the polished metal of bicycles chained to racks and the colorful tiles of the school entrance. The faint hum of distant traffic mingled with the laughter and chatter of children, creating a dynamic soundtrack of ordinary life that contrasted sharply with the lingering tension of the earlier confrontation. Jasmine adjusted the strap of her shoulder bag, a small, practical movement that anchored her in the present and reinforced her composure, while she scanned the street with an attentive eye, noting the rhythm of passers-by and the patterns of pedestrian flow, all details that informed her awareness and readiness. She began walking toward her parked car, her steps measured and deliberate, the crisp autumn air carrying subtle scents of baked bread from a nearby bakery, cut grass from a front yard, and the faint tang of exhaust from cars moving along the adjacent street. Each sound and smell blended seamlessly into the tapestry of the morning, grounding her while sharpening her focus. Her thoughts briefly drifted to the tasks ahead, the errands she needed to complete, the groceries to pick up, the bills to organize. Yet she allowed none of these considerations to distract from her present attention. Her hand instinctively brushed Leo's jacket sleeve as she recalled his small smile and the trust he placed in her guidance, a quiet affirmation of the bond that anchored her strength and purpose. Jasmine's mind, methodical and precise, cataloged the details of the neighborhood. The positioning of parked cars, the movement of delivery vans, the shifting light reflecting off windows and pavement, and the gestures of pedestrians passing by, all elements that she observed with a practiced attentiveness born from years of managing life with caution and resolve. She adjusted her posture, shoulders squared, chin slightly lifted, a subtle demonstration of her confidence, and calm, a silent signal to any observer that she moved with purpose and integrity. The sunlight reflected in the windows of the townhouses, creating brief glimmers that danced across the sidewalk in her bag, and she noted the subtle movements of neighbors going about their routines, the careful placement of potted plants, the quiet closing of doors and windows, the rhythms of ordinary life that she navigated with grace and attentiveness. Jasmine's gaze swept the street one last time before reaching her car, cataloging the environment in a steady, disciplined manner, aware of every movement and detail, yet moving with natural ease. She paused at the vehicle, taking a slow, deliberate breath that filled her lungs with the cool, crisp morning air, grounding herself fully in the present moment while preparing for the next steps of the day. Leo's small hand brushed hers as he joined her at the car, a gentle reminder of the responsibility and care that shaped her decisions, and she offered a calm, reassuring nod, conveying confidence and assurance without a word. The street around them hummed with life, the distant sounds of children, neighbors, and vehicles blending into a backdrop of normalcy that framed Jasmine's poised and steady presence. She opened the car door with a quiet click, the leather interior catching the sunlight, and guided Leo into his seat, fastening his seatbelt with meticulous care, each motion purposeful and deliberate. Jasmine sat in the driver's seat, adjusted the mirror, and exhaled softly, a controlled release of tension that carried the calm authority she embodied, her eyes scanning the rearview mirror and the surrounding neighborhood with a careful, measured attentiveness, prepared for any development, yet grounded firmly in her own composure and quiet strength. The morning's calm was pierced by the sudden sound of footsteps on the pavement, the rhythm of urgency in contrast with the lingering serenity of the neighborhood. Jasmine Carter's attention sharpened, her eyes scanning the approaching figures with the practiced vigilance of someone accustomed to reading the subtle cues in human behavior. The three officers returned to her view, their expressions a mixture of authority and skepticism, their earlier amusement replaced with a measure of caution as they took in her composed demeanor and the quiet confidence that radiated from her stance. Jasmine adjusted the strap of her shoulder bag, the familiar weight grounding her, and took a deliberate step forward, aligning herself slightly in front of Leo as a protective gesture, subtle yet deliberate, signaling both attentiveness and readiness. The sun had risen higher now, its light casting crisp shadows along the curb, illuminating the texture of the asphalt and the gentle sway of tree branches overhead, each detail absorbed with meticulous care as she maintained her calm presence. The air carried the scent of fallen leaves and the faint aroma of nearby coffee shops, mingling with the faint hum of distant traffic, all contributing to a sensory landscape that Jasmine navigated with quiet authority. The officers exchanged glances, the subtle shifting of weight and adjustment of hands on belts betraying their uncertainty, a tension that Jasmine observed with a steady gaze, noting the micro-expressions and the cadence of their voices, each detail adding to the mosaic of awareness she maintained. Leo's small hand gripped hers, a silent tether that reminded her of her responsibility and the stakes of the moment, and she offered a reassuring squeeze, her eyes meeting his with a steady calm that conveyed trust and safety without the need for words. Jasmine's mind cataloged the scene with deliberate precision, the positioning of parked cars along the street, the distance of the nearest pedestrians, the angle of sunlight on the sidewalk, the subtle reflections in the glass windows of the townhouses, all elements woven into a detailed map of her environment that informed every movement and choice. She took another slow breath, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs, a calming ritual that reinforced her centered focus as she subtly shifted her stance to maintain both balance and an unspoken assertion of composure. The officers moved slightly, their posture signaling challenge and a measured assertion of presence, Yet Jasmine held her ground, her gaze unwavering, conveying a quiet strength that neither provoked nor yielded, a testament to her awareness and preparation. The street around them pulsed with ordinary life. Children laughing as they walked to school, neighbors tending to gardens, a dog barking in the distance, the hum of a bicycle bell, all juxtaposed against the tension in the moment. Yet Jasmine's focus remained intact, a steady axis amidst movement and observation. She noted the subtle details in their uniforms, the way the sunlight highlighted creases in their clothing, the shine of polished badges, each a marker of the structure and hierarchy they represented, yet none diminishing the authority she embodied in her calm, measured presence. As the officers spoke, their voices deliberate, measured, and slightly constrained by the awareness of onlookers, Jasmine listened carefully, parsing tone and implication, her response measured, deliberate, and composed, each word a reflection of thoughtfulness and clarity rather than reaction. The gentle rustle of leaves in the autumn breeze and the distant hum of activity provided a continuous, grounding backdrop as Jasmine maintained her poise, her hands adjusting briefly over her shoulder bag and Leo's backpack, subtle movements that communicated both care and readiness. She allowed a brief moment for Leo to adjust his grip and straighten his posture, reinforcing the mutual awareness and shared rhythm that guided them through the ordinary and extraordinary challenges alike, maintaining composure, dignity, and measured anticipation in a neighborhood morning that had quietly transformed into a stage for quiet assertion and the anticipation of consequence. The street fell into a quiet stillness as Jasmine sat in her car for a moment, her hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, feeling the gentle warmth of the dashboard beneath her fingers. The sunlight filtered through the trees lining the avenue, casting intricate patterns of light and shadow across the leather seats, and the subtle movement of leaves in the autumn breeze created a rhythmic dance that mirrored her steady heartbeat. Jasmine exhaled slowly, closing her eyes briefly, allowing herself a moment to center her thoughts and emotions. The ambient sounds of distant traffic, children playing, and the faint chirping of birds blending into a soothing background. Leo adjusted in his seat, his small hands resting on his lap as he watched the light shift through the windshield, his eyes reflecting curiosity and the quiet comfort of knowing his mother was present and composed. Jasmine observed the reflections in the rearview mirror, the soft glint of sunlight off nearby cars and windows, noting the subtle interplay of brightness and shadow that defined the morning, each detail grounding her in the sensory reality of the neighborhood. She allowed herself to notice the way the air carried a mix of scents, the faint aroma of freshly baked bread from the bakery 2 blocks away, the subtle tang of fallen leaves and damp earth from the previous night's drizzle, and the clean, crisp hint of autumn air filling her lungs and enhancing her focus. Jasmine's thoughts traced the gentle hum of ordinary life around her, the rhythm of pedestrians stepping along the sidewalks, the distant sound of a bicycle bell, the occasional bark of a dog, all blending into a tapestry of movement and sound that she absorbed with calm attentiveness. She glanced toward the school entrance once more, noting the orderly flow of students arriving, the teachers' gestures guiding them safely, the chatter of children mingling with the soft footsteps on pavement, creating a backdrop of structured activity that contrasted with the lingering tension of the earlier moments on the street. Jasmine's eyes softened as she looked at Leo, the faint sunlight catching the highlights in his hair, the subtle warmth of his presence beside her reinforcing the quiet resolve she carried, a reminder of the responsibility and love that shaped each of her choices. She adjusted her seat slightly, the leather creaking gently under her weight, and felt the steady press of her hands against the wheel, a tactile reminder of control and preparedness. Jasmine's gaze swept the surrounding street again, noting parked vehicles, the positioning of pedestrians, the small details of the neighborhood that often went unnoticed but formed the landscape of their daily life, each observation reinforcing her awareness and readiness. The light shifted as the sun rose higher, casting longer shadows and highlighting textures across the pavement and building facades, the subtle warmth creating a serene contrast with the focused alertness Jasmine maintained. She allowed a brief, measured smile to cross her face, a silent acknowledgment of the ordinary joy surrounding them, the children's laughter, the distant chatter, the flutter of pages from a newspaper caught by the breeze, all reinforcing the continuity and normalcy she sought to provide for Leo while remaining attentive to the nuances of the environment. Jasmine took a slow, deliberate breath, the air filling her lungs with crisp clarity, and as she exhaled, her shoulders relaxed slightly, her posture remaining poised, a visual signal of calm authority and centeredness that carried through her every movement. The quiet reflection allowed her to consider the next steps of the day, the errands, the preparations, and the continuity of routines, each layered with careful thought and awareness, reinforcing a sense of structure and assurance. Jasmine reached gently over to adjust Leo's seatbelt once more, a small motion of care and precision, reaffirming the protective rhythm she maintained, the bond and silent communication between mother and child grounding them both amidst the ebb and flow of the neighborhood morning. The gentle rustle of leaves, the shifting sunlight, the soft movement of people and vehicles in the distance, all contributed to a sense of calm vigilance, a poised readiness for what the remainder of the morning might bring, balanced with the quiet, steady presence that defined Jasmine's approach to each moment and every unfolding scene in their day. The distant hum of an approaching engine shifted the rhythm of the morning, a subtle vibration that reached Jasmine's ears before the vehicle itself became visible, drawing her attention to the street ahead with a heightened sense of anticipation. A dark, polished SUV turned the corner with precise control, the sunlight glinting off its metallic surface, casting brief reflections that danced across the pavement and surrounding buildings. Jasmine's eyes narrowed slightly as she observed the vehicle slowing to a stop, its movement deliberate, measured, and commanding, immediately altering the atmosphere of the neighborhood street. Leo, still seated in the car, tilted his head, sensing the subtle change in the energy around them, and Jasmine reached over to adjust his seatbelt, her touch gentle, reassuring, a small anchor of stability in the unfolding moment. The SUV's door opened with a controlled click, and a figure emerged with an unmistakable presence, a calm authority radiating from each measured step toward them. The air seemed to hold its breath as the figure approached, every observer on the street momentarily pausing to take in the sudden shift in dynamics. The morning sounds of distant children's laughter and casual conversations fading into the background as the attention of the space focused entirely on the unfolding scene. Jasmine's posture remained upright and poised, her shoulders squared, her hands lightly resting on the steering wheel, her gaze steady and deliberate as she assessed the arrival, recognizing the quiet yet undeniable command inherent in each movement of the approaching individual. The sunlight caught the edges of the figure's uniform and gear, highlighting details that suggested discipline, experience, and readiness, and Jasmine's mind cataloged each observation with meticulous precision, noting the calm confidence that contrasted sharply with the earlier tension she had experienced on the street. The officers, who had lingered at a short distance, now exhibited a subtle but perceptible shift in their body language, a slight hesitation, the previous assurance in their posture giving way to the realization that the balance of power had changed in an instant. Jasmine maintained her composure, the gentle sway of leaves and the rustle of paper from a nearby newspaper stand punctuating the otherwise suspended atmosphere, each element of the environment providing a textured backdrop to the unfolding revelation. She glanced briefly at Leo, offering a reassuring nod that conveyed calm and certainty without words, her eyes meeting his in a moment of quiet understanding that the situation was now under controlled observation, that the arrival signaled the presence of protection and oversight beyond the ordinary. The SUV's doors closed with deliberate precision, the faint hum of its engine now a steady, grounding sound beneath the subtle chorus of urban life, and the figure stepped closer, each movement intentional, each gesture a reflection of authority exercised with measured restraint. Jasmine exhaled slowly, allowing a fraction of tension to release, while keeping her body aligned with vigilance and readiness, her awareness encompassing the entire street, the neighboring buildings, and the unfolding narrative in front of her. The officers exchanged glances, their previous certainty now replaced by careful observation, each subtle gesture and shift in stance communicating a newfound acknowledgment of the power now present on the street. Jasmine's fingers brushed lightly over the leather of the steering wheel, the tactile sensation reinforcing her composure, and her eyes continued to track every movement of the approaching figure, noting the precision in posture, the controlled cadence of each step, and the calm intensity that signaled both experience and preparedness. Around them, the sounds of the morning, the faint chatter of students, the distant bark of a dog, the low rumble of passing traffic, resumed with gentle persistence, yet the street retained a palpable tension, a measured pause that emphasized the dramatic shift, the quiet assertion of authority that now defined the space and commanded attention in subtle but undeniable ways. The morning sunlight glinted off the polished surface of the SUV as John Carter, the Delta Force commander, stepped fully onto the street, his presence radiating calm authority that seemed to stretch the space around him, holding the air in a quiet, tense suspension. Jasmine Carter remained in her car, her hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, her eyes steady, watching as the officers shifted in response to the sudden appearance, their previous certainty replaced by careful observation, subtle gestures betraying a newfound awareness that the situation was no longer theirs to command. John moved with a measured precision, his posture upright and deliberate, the cadence of his steps communicating both control and restraint, his gaze sweeping over the officers with an appraisal that was both calm and exacting. Jasmine inhaled slowly, feeling the crisp morning air fill her lungs, centering herself and Leo, who sat quietly in the passenger seat, his small hands gripping the straps of his backpack with a sense of trust and anticipation, his eyes wide as he absorbed the unexpected shift in the street's energy. The sunlight cast long, angled shadows across the pavement, highlighting the textures of the asphalt, the subtle unevenness of the concrete sidewalk, and the gentle sway of tree branches overhead, all captured in a tableau that felt at once ordinary and charged with significance. Around them, the neighborhood resumed its ambient hum of life. Distant voices, the faint rumble of vehicles along adjacent streets, a dog barking somewhere down the block, the soft clatter of a newspaper as it shifted in the breeze. Yet the immediate vicinity held a quiet tension, a pause in which every subtle movement and gesture carried weight. Jasmine adjusted her posture, her shoulders back, chin lifted, projecting a quiet confidence that mirrored John's presence, each of them aligned in a shared sense of calm authority, a measured assertion of dignity and preparedness that contrasted sharply with the uncertainty now evident in the officers. Leo shifted slightly in his seat, the gentle sunlight catching the highlights in his hair, and Jasmine offered him a reassuring smile, her eyes conveying calm and certainty without a single word, reinforcing their silent communication and mutual understanding. The officers hesitated, their previous movements of casual assertion now slowed, tentative, as they took in the command inherent in John's presence, the careful, deliberate assessment of his posture, the subtle authority reflected in each step and measured gesture, a recognition that the balance of power had shifted decisively. Jasmine exhaled softly, feeling a controlled release of the tension that had built through the morning, yet her focus remained sharp, her attention spanning the street, the positions of the officers, and the surrounding neighborhood, cataloging details with deliberate precision, the glint of sunlight on metal, the sway of leaves, the gentle rise and fall of the air currents around them. John's gaze met hers briefly, a silent acknowledgment, a shared understanding of readiness and composure, and Jasmine allowed herself the faintest nod, a subtle affirmation of connection and trust, reinforcing the assurance and confidence she carried. The street held a measured quiet, the ordinary rhythms of the neighborhood momentarily held at bay by the clarity and poise of the figures present, every small detail, the hum of distant traffic, the rustle of leaves, the shifting light on the pavement, becoming a backdrop to the quiet authority that now dominated the scene, signaling that calm, integrity, and preparedness were the true measures of control in that space. Jasmine's hands rested lightly on the wheel, her breath steady, her eyes scanning every element of the environment, while Leo's small presence beside her served as a grounding reminder of the reason for their composed vigilance, the balance of observation and reassurance creating a scene of quiet, compelling anticipation as the morning continued to unfold under the watchful gaze of authority, awareness, and measured intent. The street now seemed suspended in a quiet, almost reverent stillness as Jasmine Carter and Leo sat inside the car, the sunlight warm on their skin and reflecting off the polished dashboard, casting soft patterns across the interior. John Carter stood a few feet away, his presence calm, composed, and unmistakably authoritative, the Delta Force commander exuding a quiet confidence that had transformed the dynamic of the neighborhood with subtle inevitability. Jasmine's gaze lingered on her brother for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgment passing between them, a shared understanding of the day's events and the resolution that had quietly arrived. The officers had retreated to a measured distance, their postures no longer assertive but cautious, their eyes following every subtle movement, registering the shift in energy that now governed the street. Jasmine exhaled slowly, allowing a fraction of tension to dissipate, her hands resting lightly on the steering wheel while her awareness remained fully engaged, noting the nuances of body language, the alignment of shadows across the pavement, and the soft sway of leaves in the gentle autumn breeze. Leo adjusted slightly in his seat, the sunlight catching his hair, and Jasmine reached over with a gentle hand, smoothing the strap of his backpack, an unspoken gesture of reassurance and continuity that mirrored the calm order now settled over their surroundings. The SUV gleamed in the sunlight, a silent sentinel, its presence alone signaling the authority and protective readiness that had arrived in response to Jasmine's measured call for support, reinforcing a sense of security that had not been present moments before. The neighborhood resumed its rhythm in small increments, a distant dog bark, the faint hum of traffic, children laughing as they walked to school, neighbors going about their morning routines, all elements blending into a tapestry of ordinary life that Jasmine observed with careful attention, cataloging each detail even as she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The streetlights caught the glint of sunlight on parked cars, windows, and the gentle curvature of wrought iron fences, creating a subtle interplay of light and shadow that lent a sense of texture and depth to the scene, grounding Jasmine in the familiar environment even as extraordinary events unfolded around her. She shifted slightly in her seat, the soft creak of leather accompanying the movement, and felt a sense of resolution settling in her chest, a calm awareness that the morning's tension had been diffused through careful action, measured composure, and the presence of authority that had aligned with integrity and preparedness. Leo's eyes met hers briefly, and she offered a small, serene smile, a communication of reassurance and trust, reflecting the quiet understanding that the situation had been met with the balance of vigilance and care necessary to navigate it successfully. The surrounding buildings, the leafy trees, the gently rustling newspapers caught in a soft breeze, all contributed to the sensory backdrop, a textured canvas against which the day's events had played out and now began to settle into ordinary rhythms once more. Jasmine allowed her hands to rest fully on the steering wheel, her fingers brushing the smooth surface with subtle grounding, her mind cataloging the quiet resumption of life outside, while appreciating the balance and composure that had defined her actions, each movement deliberate, precise, and full of calm authority. The faint scent of autumn leaves mixed with the warm notes of baked bread from nearby shops, carrying softly through the open car window, reinforcing the grounding presence of ordinary life as the extraordinary events of the morning receded, leaving a quiet reflection and steady, composed anticipation for the remainder of the day. Jasmine exhaled slowly, a soft, controlled release of energy, and felt the stability of the moment, the shared understanding with her brother, and the trust of her son, all converging into a sense of completion, a quiet affirmation that integrity, composure, and presence could shape the world around her even in subtle, profound ways.